You so much for joining me. I'm really excited to be able to offer the Strategic UX Management program again. And we did this. I had the last cohort was in September of last year, and it was really really profoundly powerful for all the folks who joined in that cohort and made me really excited to offer it again. So I'm going to talk a little bit about um, the program, the format, and the content, and what you will learn from joining this. Joining the program and also the outcomes that you might expect from being in a program in the way that I've structured it. The next program, the next session of it starts February 15th and goes through April 5th. And it's an 8-week program. And it is live sessions with a cohort of others, other UX peers, along with group coaching and mastermind sessions. So the whole thing is just really full of learning from the program, but also learning from each other in the peer format that we have. I want to introduce to you why this program, why I've structured the program the way it is, and why I'm even doing the program. Tell you a little bit about the format of the program, and then I want to go over what I consider the 6 foundational elements of strategic UX management. And those are the elements that we cover in the program. And then I'll have a little time for any questions and answers. Um, I just want to tell you a little bit about me to start with. I'm Leigh Allen-Arredondo, and I've been a leader in technology, specifically in user experience design and research and strategy and leading teams for over 20 years. And I've worked for very large companies like Amazon. I've also worked at mid-sized companies and startups. I've worked at agencies. I've been a consultant. So kind of all the ways that you could experience being a UX practitioner and a UX leader. I've tried that. I've led teams creating design software and games, highly complex platforms and enterprise, B2B, B2C, e-commerce. So just to name a few, I feel really fortunate that I've been able to do so many things in one career. And as a team leader and as a leader in UX, I got to a place in my own career where I felt that where I had the most interest and where I brought the most value and the most impact was actually in developing high performing teams and working across teams towards building UX maturity and building UX strategies for company. And so but I really did love working with individuals on the team and working with the individuals on their own UX leadership journey. It was something that I still love as a coach. Because a couple of years ago, well, more than a couple of years ago, a few years back, I began the transition into my own coaching practice. And and now I work full time as a coach and leadership development trainer. I work with individuals and with teams to really create more impactful outcomes for themselves and for their work, and to continue growing in their career as really authentic leaders. So I want to start. I want to talk about why strategic UX management and tell you a little bit about why I created this. Um, I would also really love to find out from you. So, what's your why? What brought you here today? If you want to go ahead and write your answers in the chat, what was it about the description of this program that resonated with you? And I can mention that people have joined for many reasons. And one really common reason is that in a lot of companies, there's a lack of executive level UX leadership. So UX often management ladders up to product management or engineering or marketing. And there may not be very many or any other UX leaders for you to learn from where you work. And even if there are other UX leaders, getting support from a UX leadership coach and UX peers that are at other companies can really bring new perspectives. And it's a very safe space. It's non-judgmental. You aren't worried about, your own place within, as you are in work, your own place within the environment. And so everyone here can ask for help and support, and that doesn't necessarily feel comfortable at work. Let's see in the chat, just curious what it's about and what is different than other programs. So I can tell you how this is. I don't know necessarily how it's different from other UX leadership programs. I know it's very different from other non-UX leadership programs. And there aren't a lot of other UX leadership programs out there. So I will go in depth into why this one is so impactful, both the format of it and the content of it. My comment about the lack of leadership development resonated with you. So that is really common. Even in a large company, so in the last cohort, we had folks from very large companies, and we also had folks from just really a wide variety of companies, and they didn't necessarily feel like they were getting the support that they needed, specifically as a leader, as a UX leader. I want to tell you why I created it, because throughout my own career, there really were not very many opportunities for hands-on leadership development training. And those that were offered were general leadership skills. And those are helpful, but they don't actually address some of the very specific issues that we have in UX, in design, in research, in any of the other disciplines that fall within the UX umbrella. So in UX, we really have to always be a champion for the impact of the user experience. We have to be a champion for user-centered processes, which other teams, frankly, don't always welcome. And design and research operations. Again, sometimes those very impactful work that we do can tend to be undervalued by other teams in a company. So many UX practitioners and managers have to spend a lot of time getting a seat at the table at the business or product strategy level, where we can really have the greatest impact on what an organization produces. And then once we get a seat at that table, sometimes we don't feel prepared, in that we haven't necessarily had a lot of other great leaders as to see how how they do it, right? So I wanted to create a program where learning and practicing leadership skills is applied in the context to the work that you do every day and the big challenges that you face that are common across these user experience fields. I didn't have it. That's why I created it, because I knew firsthand just what a difference it could make. I talk a lot about being strategic. It is part of my company name, the Strategic UX Leader, because it's such an important mindset for leaders. And it's a way to next level yourself, regardless of who you are. But I think this is very important for folks in UX, because we are always having to kind of prove the impact that our work has. And so the words strategy and strategic get thrown around quite a lot, but very simply, at its core, strategy is a plan or a method for meeting high level objectives to achieve a vision for the future. And kind of that's that. And so being strategic then means, firstly, you have to know what the vision is and that you're very clear on the objectives to get to that vision and why those objectives are important in the big picture. Being strategic in your work means that everything that you're doing is in service to those objectives. So that in your career, you need to be clear on the big picture and important objectives for yourself, for your team, for your company, as well as for your customers. So there's a lot that we have to keep in mind as UX leaders. I think that there is a simple framework for being strategic, and I love how this can be applied to virtually anything in your life where you need to get clarity, hone in on what's most important, and have an impact. I'll just describe this framework a little bit more. So it starts with understanding the big picture or the vision for the future. Then identifying what are the objectives that will get you or could potentially get you to that big picture that seem likely to get you to the big picture or to that vision. Within those objectives, there's so many opportunities. There's a whole lot of different things that you could do, and yet we only have a certain amount of time and energy. So we need a way to identify what strategically is going to be most impactful. So that requires identifying the impact, identifying what we're going to use to measure impact, and then utilizing that to prioritize. So this is kind of a very high level view of this framework, but it is the core that you can apply to a whole lot of areas of your life. You can apply this to your career when you're trying to figure out where to put your efforts in career development. You can apply this to the work of yourself or your team. So that's the framework that is sort of a guiding principle. The overarching theme of this program is being strategic. So even though there are so many things that we could be learning, but being strategic means that we can't do it all. We can't do all the things there are to be done. It's not in our best interest to try. So the course is designed so that you can apply that strategic framework I just went over toward everything that you learn. And you can put it into practice over the course of 2 months. You're going to be identifying what's most impactful for you based on, and it sort of builds upon itself. So you identify your vision and your top objectives at the beginning, and those follow you through. Your values and strengths comes next. Those follow you through. Everything is building on the previous learnings that you've had. Also, I've designed it in a way so that you can more quickly identify what is going to be most impactful for you. And then there are choices that you can make as far as where you want to put your energy. So just a little bit about why it's structured this way. The first 3 are really kind of focused on self-leadership, which is really a foundation for our leadership career, but it also never ends. This is a continual journey. So those are those first 3 modules that then move into that, sort of give you that really real solid foundation of self-awareness and managing your mindset and really understanding yourself and your own vision as well as the vision for your work and your teams. And then we move into building influence and impact. Within these modules, you may have very specific areas that are more important to you. Everybody is at a different level. And so you already know how to do parts of all of these things. And you may be an excellent communicator in one area of your work, but there are possibly other areas in your work where communication is less comfortable. So those are the sorts of things that we identify. There are so many different ways that you can apply these learnings: managing up, managing stakeholders, giving more effective feedback, getting others to support your work or ideas, and that the way you go about that changes depending on who it is that you're trying to sort of convince. Building consensus, again, that changes depending on the context. Everyone's at a different place in their career journey. So in each module, you're going to get options for developing and practicing whatever's going to be most impactful for you in the context of what is present for you in your current work environment. That is what one of the things that makes this program so powerful, is because it becomes customized and tailored for you. By the way, um, this session, I'm talking the majority of this sort of session. It is not like that when we are doing our learning sessions. I am not talking for a really long period of time, actually. The majority of the time is spent in discussion and breakout rooms. There are exercises that we go through. We go through them together. We go through them in breakout rooms. It's very hands-on and very interactive. So just a little bit more about the format. Even though there is a lot that we cover, we take it in chunks so that you don't ever get overwhelmed. There isn't pre-work required before each session. A lot of other programs do require pre-work, and I've found that so many people don't do it. So I've tried to pack as much into the learning session as possible. The homework from every session is putting into practice at work the learnings from that session. And every session, there are, so many insights that people gain from the way that this is put together. And there are other resources available each week if you want to dive deeper on anything. Some people wonder how much time they need to set aside weekly. And I would say, like, the minimum is showing up. The bare minimum is just showing up for the learning session. That's 1.5 hours a week. Then there are multiple weeks where there's also a 1 hour group coaching session, coaching or mastermind. So you will get a lot of value out of that if you add that on. And that's not every week, but it's 4 times, I believe. And then homework could be as little as 15 minutes a day for self-reflection, because the homework is actually putting into practice what you already identified for you to work on. So you might want to reflect daily, how is that going for you? Or you might decide, so for example, there were multiple people who decided that they wanted to spend a half day in development with their team on a specific topic, whether that was vision or some of the other things that came out of it. They realized there were some things they could work on with their team. Every session is recorded, and so if you do have to miss a session, you can watch it. And we also have a Slack community, so you can ask questions, and you can even get together one-on-one with others with others in the cohort. I'm just going to dive in a little bit. It's still kind of at a high level about each of these specific modules. So the first place to start, just like in the strategic framework, is vision. So it's really important for you to be clear on where you're headed. And it's also really important for you to be able to communicate this to others along the way in a way that's easy for others to visualize. So the thing that I like about this quote here is that a vision needs to be inspiring. It has to inspire you as well as those whose commitment you need. And this is very important when you talk about leading a team. What's your own personal leadership vision, but what's your vision for the team? So vision is looking big picture, the objectives are looking much closer. 1 year, 6 months, maybe even 3 months. What is your number one priority or your top 2 or 3 objectives for the next 6 months or year? Those things are actually going to be helping you strategize throughout the rest of the program. And if you don't know them right now, that's okay. That's why we go through it in the program. Not everybody comes into the program having a clear vision or understanding what their top objectives are. Some people do, and that works too. I can remember the first time that I was asked, "What's your leadership style?" I had to come up I had to come up with the answer on the spot, even though I was applying for a leadership role, and I had been in leadership roles for years, but I hadn't actually considered what my leadership style is. I had been leading teams for several years already, and so it's embarrassing to say I hadn't actually considered it, because it seems like something I should have had an answer for. Um, if you Google leadership styles, you'll get some list of the 4 or the 5 or the 7 leadership styles, but none of them necessarily describe you or the kind of leader you are or the kind of leader you want to be. And I feel like we don't often give ourselves the time, the reflection to really think deeply about that. Having this vision can also help you identify what's authentic. A lot of clients that I work with in coaching are kind of struggling to identify what is their authentic leadership look like, because you may read a lot of articles about, well, this is what a leader is supposed to be, or you look at the other leaders at your company and it doesn't necessarily feel like you may be an introvert, for example, or you may be really great at visually telling a story, whereas you're not so great at persuasive language. Knowing all those things, it's important for you to identify what's an authentic leader look like to you and what is your authentic leadership. So the next kind of pillar is values and strengths. This is also extremely fundamental to understanding what's most important for you and what's going to be most impactful for you to do and to work on. For you to work at your highest capacity, where you have a balance of mastery and challenge, it starts with being aligned with your values and strengths. Our values and strengths drive our motivation. So being aligned with them takes much less energy than when we are not aligned. When we're in a space or trying to do something that is not aligned with our values and our strengths, we're basically working against ourselves and it causes a lot of stress. It's also important to understand the difference between when I'm not aligned versus I'm working on something that's very challenging, that I haven't tried before. So being really clear on your values and strengths is kind of the first thing you have to know before you can even answer that question. The third pillar is mindset. And I think this is arguably one of the most important tools for any leader. Your mind can be your most powerful ally, and it can be your biggest obstacle. So, having the tools to manage our mind is a really essential building block for anyone who wants to grow and meet big challenges and do hard things and maintain balance as well. So, learning to control your mindset helps in decision making, and it's really critical for acting from a place of reason versus reacting out of emotion. It can help us develop patience and curiosity and confidence and overcome fear and anxiety and even procrastination. It Learning how to manage mindset can really be can be very powerful. It can be life changing, actually. We'll talk about growth versus fixed mindset and a learner versus judger mindset, and how to switch when you're in a fixed mindset, how to be aware. First of all, awareness is where it starts. Being aware that you're in a fixed mindset or you're in a judger mindset, and knowing how to switch, knowing how to move from fixed or judger into growth or learner. And I'll tell you the key, which you'll get to practice quite a bit. And maybe you're already really practiced at this, which is wonderful. The key is asking questions, and it's the type of questions that you ask yourself that can switch you from a mindset that's holding you back into a mindset that is allowing you to learn and grow. The next pillar is effective communication. Chances are you're very good at some types of communication, and there may be other types of communication where you see an opportunity for growth. So much of our results have to do with how well we communicate, and how well we communicate can have a lot to do with our mindset and really identifying what are our objectives in this communication. We'll talk about the types of communication. There's communicating up, across, and down. We've got asynchronous communication all the time now, giving feedback. And I'll be honest with you, one of the areas I identified a few years back as something I needed to grow in with communication was my ability to give direct feedback that was also caring. A lot of people sort of fall into either their feedback is direct, but it's not effective because it puts the other person on the defensive, or their feedback is caring, but it's not effective because it's not very direct and the other person doesn't actually understand where they need to shift or adjust. The next pillar I'm going to talk about is strategic relationships. The most effective strategic relationships also are authentic and real and honest. Influence and impact is all about relationships. It's absolutely critical to your growth and the growth of your team. Being a strategic partner, aligning to business objectives, speaking that business language, working on shared challenges, being a strategic partner across teams, it can help you scale yourself. It can help you scale your team's work, and increase the impact of your team's work. Measuring impact. This is another thing that is like in UX in particular. We have a whole lot of challenges in UX with measuring impact because we have to tie something that feels kind of soft and squishy sometimes, like user emotion, to hard numbers. That is part of what we cover. Done. So even though this step is the last, it's it's a critical piece of your management role. And the reason it's last is because all of those other pieces need to be in place for you to be most effective for your team. So all of your clarity and your confidence and your effective communication and influence, trust building can fall apart if you don't have a high performing team to implement the work. And there's challenges. So the people in this program are both people managers and team leads. Sometimes team leads don't have direct people management. So this becomes really interesting conversation in how are you going to affect the development of the other folks on your team, because as a team lead you are a leader. Identifying strengths and values for your team and the individuals on your team, making sure everybody is working at their capacity and full impact. And then also being an effective coach and mentor, which you can do from any role. It does not require being a manager to be an effective coach and mentor. And the last, so there's seven modules over 8 weeks. There's 1 week that is sort of a break week. So the seventh and last session is a roadmap where you put everything together, and this looks very different for each person who is in the program because they've all had their own journey. This was really fascinating to see how everyone identified their roadmap after these 6 modules. And we continue actually having masterminds together after that. So you'll be welcome to join our alumni masterminds. Very quickly, I just want to talk about some success stories. Promotions. These are some of the things that have happened for my clients. So promotions, getting set up for success and feeling confident after a promotion, increasing responsibilities at work. That can happen through identifying how to communicate your value more effectively. People were identifying new opportunities for themselves at work and they hadn't seen before. So when they changed their mindset and they started identifying impact and looking at things in a different way, and they saw how they could build strategic relationships and actually put that into practice, they're they didn't change a job, but their job completely changed. Increased confidence for many people because they are much more clear on their own value, on the value that they bring to the company where they're working, and their value to their team. Greater self-awareness and improved relationships, not just at work. At work, but there were a few people in the last cohort who were joking. They were sharing stories of how they brought some of these learnings home and in their communication with their kids. So, not only will you improve your communication at work, but you'll be a better parent. So that's the funny thing is when you learn and practice a lot of these things, it carries over into all of your life. I'll just sort of tell you questions that I've received. The investment that you will make in yourself is about $1,000 before February 9th, and then it goes up $230. So I do offer a discount for people who are paying from a country that has extreme currency adjustments, like India, Eastern Europe, Latin America. In the last session, we actually did have, we had people from Europe and from Latin America in the last session, and the majority were from the US. Employer reimbursement. A lot of people get this reimbursed from their company, and if you need some sort of a sales sheet, just let me know. I can get that to you. I think I covered if you miss a live session, there's recordings available. The size of the cohort right now is capped at 16, and we're approaching that, but we haven't hit that yet. So I'm thinking, well, 16 to 20 would be fine. And that would, if we do have that, say 16, I think I may be able to offer other timing options. But right now, the time is 8 a.m. Pacific time on Wednesdays. The next session after this one starts next September.